this is the whole cohort of Daksha Fellows. And thank you so much for graciously lending your time, guidance, everything for this cohort of Daksha Fellows and for the fellowship. Uh, as all of you know, Behram Vakil is part of the academic advisory board for Daksha Fellowship. Uh, but before all of that, of course, he's one of India's foremost lawyers on restructuring, project finance, insolvency, and corporate and commercial regulatory matters. He's also someone who has given a lot of his time to the government on policy making, on expert committees. Just to mention a few of the important ones on financial reform, FDI, and securities market reform. He was appointed as a key member of the Dr. T.K. Vishwanathan Committee on Bankruptcy Law Reforms uh, to draft the IBC, of course. Bahram is also a member of the Insolvency Law Amendment Committee constituted by the Ministry of Corporate Affairs to recommend amendments to the IBC. And he's also the first Indian lawyer to be invited to serve as a member of the International Insolvency Institute. Behram read law at Columbia University and is dual qualified to practice law in India and New York. Without further ado, Behram, over to you to address Daksha Fellows. We will take questions at the end of your talk.
Okay, thank you so much, Anand, for that very kind and generous introduction. Thank you to you and Daksha for this wonderful opportunity, and all the fellows for sparing your time and listening in. I hope it will be useful. And given that the time is short, apologies once again. I'll go as fast as I can, and then where I've gone too fast, you can catch me in the Q&A. So I'll start with three broad themes, much broader than law, if you will. But before I lose you, I'll just give a. I think a lot of you are young budding lawyers, so the advice I give all our juniors at AZB, I'll start with saying that it is definitely a world of specialization, and the areas you all have chosen to specialize in, and I know that the fellowship concentrates on three broad areas, are all fantastic areas for the future, and I'm sure all of you will have a super bright success. But I would say that even looking forward 5, 10 years, not only for those of you who practice in India, I hope most of you will, but even for those of you who will practice internationally, the time of super specialization post the Lehman crisis in '08 has gone. And what I mean by that is certainly in today's world, you must have one area of core expertise, no question about that, but also have at least one or two other bows to rely on, to shoot. So at AZB, we definitely follow that philosophy. Uh, about half the firm is corporate and in the broadest sense, but even the specialists, whether they are competition, capital markets, finance, they will all have done some amount of corporate work or other fields. So bottom line, what I'm saying is specialize, but do keep one or two areas as a backup, because these economic cycles are becoming more and more. And in those times, you should have a backup plan so that if your area of practice goes down for a year or two, as they inevitably do in cycles, you have a backup plan. And of course, I realize that it's not an area that a lot of you are looking at, but the evergreen areas really are real estate and employment. Because in good times or bad times, real estate and employment lawyers are always very, very busy. So that was my first point. The second point is I would urge you all that, again, I have no doubt, given that you all are fellows in this prestigious program, you will have great success. But with success should come compassion and patience. The more successful you are, the more patient, the more you should mentor, and certainly the more compassionate you should be, both in your professional and your personal life. So this, if there's any feeling that a baggage of success is also being aggressive, arrogant, and abusive, the three terrible A's, if you will, I don't subscribe to that. I think that in life and in your career, it makes no sense and it doesn't show your success by being arrogant or abusive to anyone, especially to your colleagues or all the support staff, which are really crucial in a law firm, or bottom line to anyone that you interact with in life. So please do keep that in mind. And the last point I make is that the three most crucial problems of your lives are, and certainly now, and unfortunately, they're pretty long term, so they will take a big part of your lives. Our generation, my generation, I think has done a pretty bad job on this and handed over a mess to all of you. So I only say focus on this, and that is, I'll start with the one where, thanks to the awful virus, I think there's already tremendous international focus, and I do hope India follows in that same thought process, and that is environment and sustainability. We have already seen that when you abuse nature, when you abuse the process, how the repercussions and how severe the repercussions can be. So I think there is no question that the entire world gets this, and the whole thrust on the environment and sustainability is here to stay. But the other two are equally important and interlinked and global. These are as important for India as they are for the rest of the world, and that is inequality. Inequality, unfortunately, you keep reading about it. I hope all of you read about it. Across the world is getting worse. The rich are getting richer and the poor are suffering the most. So I truly believe that, again, this doesn't make for a sustainable. It's not sustainable, and it feeds into my last point. So officially, there's a measure of inequality called the Gini coefficient, for those of you who have interest in economics, and America is the highest. But in some ways, it is the most unequal, and places like the Scandinavian countries, etc., are the most equal. But largely, that may also be because countries like China and India don't give the data properly, or the data is inadequate. So, bottom line, in country after country, the indicators are going the wrong way. So, again, there, I think, please do keep that in mind. And those of you who are working in those areas, policy, tax, figure out ways to cut the pie in a better way than our generation did. And the last one, which I say is linked, is tolerance. There seems to be a wave of intolerance across the world. If you just go through the map, literally, thank God there's a big change in the US recently. But otherwise, from the US all the way through, you had country after country that had populist, authoritarian leaders who really didn't care for the vast majority of the population and followed a divide and rule. Now, India, I think, has a fantastic opportunity to be an example to the world, not to follow the herd, but to be an example. Because it is, I'm sure all of you agree, the last country in the world where you can follow such a divide and rule policy. It will just blow up like a tinderbox. And history has shown us that. So I do hope that we keep that in mind once again. In India for sure, because that's where all of us live, but also across the world, because this whole inequality, intolerance, and even sustainability, these three are very much intertwined. So, with that, I'll quickly jump into the more legal aspect, and that is the bankruptcy code. For the last 7 years or so, it has absorbed my life. So, I'm very much a one trick pony today. And if I don't speak about IBC, it will be strange for me, and I'm sure all of you would like some perspective. So, first, I'll say that India is not known for speed, and very rarely are we faster and more efficient than Singapore, for example. But in this case, it took us 13 months to draft a law from scratch, taking all the best international models, of course, all the common law countries, US, UK, Canada, Australia, etc. But also, we looked at some of the civil law. Italy was working on one, some of the others were. So, we looked at the latest best practice. And all those countries took about 3.5 years. We completed it in 13 months. And that just shows that when the government puts its mind to it, all the arms of the government are united. And that's what happened here. You know, the Ministry of Finance, Law, Company Affairs that now runs it, the Reserve Bank of India, SEBI, Competition Commission, everybody was behind this. And that is how we achieved it so fast. Not only that, it's easy to pass a law uh, in some ways, one like this, which is not overly controversial. But thereafter, the implementation, because we've in this law, you have a brand new regulator, the IBBI, you have a brand new set of professionals called the insolvency professionals. They did not exist in India. So people were very worried how long will it take to get this set of professionals. I'm very happy to say that in a short, it's now 4 years, we have more insolvency professionals than the UK has in the last 30 years. Of course, our population is slightly larger, so we have to take that into account. Uh, and then we had a brand new concept of this information utility, which is really a electronic data bank. You put in all the data, the borrower and the banks, and therefore, when you there's a default, you don't have this non-stop bickering in court and in the tribunals. It is evidence of the debt, and when there's a default, evidence of the default. So all these concepts once again came in a year, and that is why even though the IBC was slated to be first Jan 17, we were ready 30 days early, and we started on 1st December. Now, fast forwarding, why we all know that India had a massive non-performing asset problem, the NPAs. We were very, very reliant on bank credit. Our bond markets, unlike our equity markets, are not very deep or sophisticated. So, therefore, this is definitely a creditor in possession. So, the banks take the key decision. The banks take over the company the minute it is admitted, and not the promoters. So, it is not a debtor in possession model like, say, the US or Singapore, because in India, we felt that most of the money was with the banks and they should be the ones in control. And therefore, the biggest change that IBC has done is that it has uh, changed the credit culture in India, because no promoter likes to lose their company. And as I said, on day of admission, you lose your company. So therefore, the idea, the threat of losing your company makes those who can pay come to the table and quickly pay up. So that has changed the culture a lot. A lot of the success has been pre IBC or pre admission, just because you need to settle. And the other last thing, because I do want to leave enough time for Q&A, and I know there's a 5 o'clock. So I wanted to say that, many people have said it's been very slow. There's been so much litigation all the way from NCLT to the Supreme Court. Cases like SR, went up and down many times. So one thing was that this brand new law started with the 12 largest cases in India, all in billions of dollars. So in some ways, it was tested by the most difficult, complex cases. And again, very pleased to say it withstood the challenge. And just like people say that in these 11 months, you have moved digitally ahead 3, 4 years. Just like that, I would say that the case law that we have got in 4 years of IBC from NCLT to Supreme Court would have normally taken India minimum 8 years to get. So we have got a real robust set of case law now because the courts gave super priority to these cases. And I'll end by saying, to show you, I am biased because I'm so close to the process. And of course, there's always room for improvement. But let's take three parameters, which I'm sure you will agree are fair parameters. There's a direct correlation between time you take and the recovery you get. So the time it took was 6 to 8 years before IBC. It now takes, on an average, about 334 days. That's what the regulator's website shows you. And I'm very proud to say that about a year is best in class. Whether you take Singapore, Canada, UK, etc., the best countries, they all take around a year. So if we take a year, even though we aimed at 9 months and then took it to 330 days, actually we are doing really well. All we need to do is keep up the speed. Recovery, we were at 22 cents to the dollar or 22 paisa to the rupee, and we are now at 45 paisa. Best in class against the countries I've been talking about is 80 cents to the dollar. So big room for improvement, but we have already come halfway. From 22, we have doubled. And the last one is the cost of the process, the cost of the restructuring. And that has gone down 8 times. From around 9%, it is now around 1%, lowest in the world. So, on two parameters, speed and cost, we are already best in class. For recovery, we have some room to go. Thank you so much once again for the opportunity.
Thank you, Behram. Seldom that they get an opportunity to listen to someone like you. And we deeply appreciate the fact that you spoke about not only IBC, but the core values required to, be a decent human being, right? And I think coming from a leader of the profession like you, that really means a lot and goes a long way, I'm sure. So we have some time for questions. We have about 15 minutes. And I'll just pass the mic around. Please feel free to ask questions. First, introduce yourself and make it short. Questions, not comments.
Good afternoon, sir. Am I audible, sir?
Yeah, very.
My name is Abhishek Yadav, sir. Thank you for the wonderful insight on insolvency and bankruptcy code. And I honestly share the same thoughts. I'm also very optimistic about the code. But one thing that concerns me is because of the COVID, there has been machinery has come to an halt. So do you think that after the moratorium lifts, this machinery kind of picks up in the same pace? Like you were mentioning that we have done good on the speed, and we are now in best in class in speed. So do you think that we'll be able to take care of all the the pending or the prospective insolvency proceedings that we're going to have after the moratorium lifts?
Yeah, thank you. That's a great question. And I wish I had an answer. I can only hope. You are right. The moratorium will have been a full year. I am quite confident that they will lift it on the 26th of March, but there will be a backlog. And many have asked me, what numbers do you expect? How much is the backlog? There'll be better judges on that than me. I think the regulator, who's a very proactive workaholic type of regulator, will have some numbers. But I can only say that I think the machinery will jump back into action because the government, again, fortunately, is extremely keen. And that I'm aware of because, Anand very kindly mentioned the ILC, which is a standing committee on amendments. And we met already 2 days ago. We are meeting again for 5, 6 hours on a Saturday. So the enthusiasm of the government has not changed whatsoever. And the Ministry of Corporate Affairs as well. So they will push the tribunals to move as fast as possible and to create the bandwidth. The number of cases is very difficult to predict. Don't forget, as I said, we need to also get other, you need as many tools in the box because the size of the problem is huge. So some of you may have read in the budget, they talked about bad bank. RBI has a June 7th restructuring mechanism. We are working on, again, maybe some of you heard what we call a pre-pack, where you do most of the work upfront. You negotiate a deal between the new promoters and the borrowers, or the existing promoter and the borrowers, and then go to NCLT to fast track it through the process. So you should have different schemes, not just the IBC, because otherwise it will get overburdened. So my answer would be I'm cautiously optimistic. There are delays and there will definitely be a long queue of cases. I just hope there are not too many and many of those are resolved pre IBC.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Meli, you have a question? Sure, please go.
Good evening, sir. This is Himeli. My first question is: you spoke about traits that we as fellows should acquire after throughout the fellowship and after that. What one thing that you didn't mention is entrepreneurship, and what do you think about that? Is that something that we should also be acquiring? And secondly, sir, I wanted to ask you about the consumer forum, financial services consumer redressal mechanism that is currently in place. And I didn't understand why the IFC got scrapped, the Indian Finance Code. And do you think something like that should, an overarching regulatory body should be present and something like that should be introduced again?
I have to compliment you. Terrific questions, guys. So yeah, entrepreneurship definitely. I was just focusing on the key ones. You will, almost certainly need that. Whatever field, whether you're going to counsel practice, then of course you're directly dealing with the clients, and it's a service industry. So you have to be an entrepreneur. If you are working in a law firm, same story. As you get senior, you have to, eat what you kill, as they say. You have to get your own clients. You have to do business development and be as entrepreneurial as you can. Once again, what I've learned after a 40-year career is balance is huge in life. Whether it's work life balance and in so many aspects, try and, I'm a big follower of the middle path, as the Buddha used to say. So keep a balance. We should not stop being professionals. We can't just act as if we are business guys. At the end of the day, we are professionals. And so you have to maintain that balance. You can't get that commercial. So that's my answer. But no question, to be successful, some amount of entrepreneurial spirit. But it's in the DNA of most of us. So I think you'll be fine there. Again, on the law, I can't agree with you more. I think, if I remember right, it was Justice Sri Krishna and a good friend of mine, Ajay Shah, etc. Fantastic, much needed. Uh, I guess it just didn't, luck is so important in life. People were working on the IBC, on the code in the Congress time for more than a decade. So when we said we were going to do it in a year, there were people who had been working for a decade and used to laugh at us like we are, naive, crazy people. But we were just fortunate. Without the government support, it would never have happened. So I guess this one just ran into a problem and did not get the support it deserved. But what they do have, I hope you're aware, is what they call the FSDC. So there, all the regulators, the chairman, so governor of Reserve Bank, chairman SEBI, chairman insurance regulator, chairman pension regulator, they all sit once a month, I believe, and if necessary, even more often, and deliberate the interregulatory issues. But that law would be very helpful.
Thank you, sir.
You have time for one last question.
So, my name is Anirudh. My question stems from a Supreme Court judgment which actually, scrapped uh, the CDR and the SDR schemes. In light of the pandemic, would you prefer that the IBC go forward, or as you said other schemes should come in play? should we look to something similar as CDR and the SDR schemes, which gave banks a more pivotal role because the banks are more stressed than ever?
No, so no CDR, SDR. The whole what we call the alphabet soup. There was triple 4S and all that, all gone. Sadly, again, if you look at the stats, if you read the RBI reports, the stats are there. They didn't do well, and it was a pretend, extend and pretend, as Dr. Raghuram Rajan used to say. So those were a failure. IBC definitely takes over from that, and there is a new restructuring scheme that RBI has. New meaning it's June 7th, so that may be extended. RBI had a fantastic scheme which would have really changed the whole atmosphere, which was in the previous year, Feb 12th. But unfortunately, that ran into problems, and the Supreme Court struck that down, feeling that it was too broad and should be case specific, which personally, with all due respect, I thought was very unfortunate. But no, I mean the banks are happy because with the RBI current scheme, which is replacing and is better than the CDR, SDR, etc. It has all the learnings and IBC. And as I say, hopefully now I think the government will move very fast on this bad bank and the pre-pack when it comes. There are enough tools in the box, and these tools are much sharper and better. So we don't have to go back to the earlier ones, which were pretty blunt.
Behram, I have just one last question, which is really to be a good commercial and commercial regulatory lawyer in particular, what do you think students need to really engage with other and of course the laws?
Yeah, so I mean, the first thing, of course, is that in law, eye for detail is tremendously important. So, to be a good regulatory lawyer, you certainly need to have that eye for detail. We are in a time period in India where there is constant new regulation, amendments to regulation. So in a way, it's a daunting task, but in today's world, at least you have all the tools to in the digital world to be kept abreast of that in a very timely manner. But you need to do that. And again, I come back to the balance that if at all you are advising, you're going into policy, you're advising the government, advising regulatory bodies, public sector companies, then keep the balance, think what is a fair deal. I think it's a very good saying when, you also have the dispute part, that the best negotiation is when both sides go back unhappy. A one sided deal is actually not a good deal because it'll definitely end up in litigation or arbitration. It won't be sustainable. So, a good deal is a balanced one. So, again, on the regulatory side, if you are working on new regs, amendments, strike a balance. Don't be too pro your client, commercial, and not too pedantic and too government or bureaucratic minded. Strike a balance. But I'll just end again because I'm really conscious. I would have loved to have had more time, but I'm really conscious of you've got fantastic speakers following me. But leave you on a very positive note that to reach 1 trillion GDP, India took 60 years. To reach the second trillion, it took 8 years. This is just the magic of compounding. So, first 60 years, then 8 years, and now every year, hopefully, by God's grace, without things like COVID, every 3 to 4 years, you'll add 1 trillion and soon be the third or fourth largest economy in the world. So, the future is very bright. Just, do a good job and be fair and compassionate. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Behram. Thank you very much. And we hope to get you again to engage with our students.